something to me. Say it quicker, won't you make it snappy? You're taking my money and all of my time. All you seem to do is drink my whiskey and wine. But I don't mind. I've got to have myself a good time. So if I'm feeling fine and you think I'm sad and you know that I'm going mad, I guess you better go it alone. Well, I guess you better go it alone. Just pick yourself up of that old deep wishing well, and grab a rope now and reach for the sky. Don't ask him any questions, girl, don't ask him why, because he doesn't mind. He's got to have himself a good time. And if he's feeling bad and you think he's sad and you know that he's going mad, I guess you better go it alone. Well, I guess you better go it alone.
Go it alone, he certainly did. It was late 2007, and after trying to keep Left Hand together and many lineup changes, Alan, who was by now the only original member left, finally decided to call it a day. Alan was at this time going through a transitional period. He had a clear vision of what he wanted to achieve now musically, and one thing was for sure: he was going to do his thing and his way. He wanted to be free from the constraints of writing for a band where there was a possibility that his songs would not be received with the same intentions that they had been offered. Alan, above all else, loved performing live. It was literally in his soul to perform before a live audience. Alan was a very musical lad and started piano lessons very early at the age of 7 and completed all his grades, so he was a very accomplished pianist. He also studied guitar when he was 11, and he quickly became an extremely fluent guitar player, so much so that he performed his first solo acoustic show the same year in an assembly at his primary school. He learned so quickly that by the age of 12 he was studying Spanish guitar, and this would explain his very fluent fingerpicking style that he used in his compositions with Left Hand, the Lipstick Melodies and his solo works. Christian Marr was living on and off with Alan at the time, and this marked the birth of the Lipstick Melodies. Christian actually came up with the name simply by writing the names that he liked on a piece of paper, tearing them up and then placing them into his hat. He pulled out the Lipstick Melodies, and that was that. It is, however, also said that if you asked Alan, he would have said that he thought of the name, and this became a bit of an inside joke. Richie Stephens, who was the keyboard player in Left Hand, was still playing with Alan on solo gigs, and it was Richie who knew the drummer Phil Clark, as they had worked together in a guitar shop in St Albans some years before, and they had always gigged with each other on and off over the years. So one night at Alan's flat, they all got together, had a jam, and gelled really well, and the Lipstick Melodies were born. The original lineup was Alan Wass, Christian Marr, Alexi Christo, Richie Stephens, and Phil Clark. This lineup literally only lasted for a couple of weeks before Christian departed to concentrate on his own songs and group. It was all very amicable, as Christian was also quite a prolific songwriter in his own right, and both Christian and Alan wanted a band that could showcase their songs properly whilst also concentrating on their solo projects. Christian, after all, had many projects going on around that time with many artists, including Amy Winehouse. Even though Christian states that he was never actually an official member of the Lipstick Melodies, his influence and input in putting these guys together just can't be ignored. Christian was an extremely close friend of Alan's, and he would play and perform with him a lot, not just in the early days but throughout Alan's entire career and life, and this was certainly not the end of Christian's journey with the Lipstick Melodies. Even as now a four-piece, this group was still a powerhouse, and they built up quite a following over the next few months as a four-piece band. It was now sometime in 2008, and Alan was still gigging solo as well as with the band. And it was after Alan had shared the bill on a solo show with both Sky Murphy and his old friend Jackson Scott that the phenomenally talented musician Sky was asked to join the band, and this gave the already superb band of guys a further boost. Sky took over the lead guitar duties, and this gave Alan space to concentrate on his vocals, though Sky was also a fantastic vocalist as well as a multi-instrumentalist. He often embarked on trombone solos at live gigs, and his relationship with Alexi Christo on stage was electric and something that sticks with me personally from the days that I saw them performing live.
My head feels like mother and my heart feels just like ice. And this chair that I've been sitting on, well, it just won't hold me tight.
members of the Lipstick Melodies were very competent musicians and well known on the circuit, so they would secure gigs at a multitude of places. They played many shows and also supported and toured extensively with Baby Shambles and Pete Doherty, and often they would host blues evenings in London's Camden Town, where they would play with a multitude of other friends and musicians. It was always a very loose and cool arrangement between all members of the Lipstick Melodies, as pretty much all participants had other projects. Sky Murphy had his band Sky Murphy and the General when he joined, which he continued to pursue throughout his time with the Lipstick Melodies. Alexi Christo was now a member of the Spring Heeled Jacks with Christian Marr, as well as a band called the Screaming Kicks. Both Richie and Phil Clark often came together and jammed with the Dirty Mojos, which they still do to this day. Alan also continued to gig as a solo artist with various acoustic shows that often include other acts. Alan and all the Lipstick Melodies would play with many other musicians and would often turn up to play or cover a position or two in pretty much any band. They all literally lived and breathed music. They played their gigs with real passion, excitement and energy, and all had an almost inexhaustible presence to their finely honed crafts. Initially they played the later Left Hand songs, plus a few that were left over such as No Protection and Serves You Right to Suffer, which were also made part of their live set. Alan's songwriting was just as strong as ever, and he would effortlessly churn out song after song, each more superb than the last. Alan would write every single note, word and chord to every original song that the Lipstick Melodies played, and he would then bring these songs to rehearsals and the Lipsticks would set to work adding their parts and arranging the songs together until they were perfect. Make no mistake though, this wasn't exactly a democracy. Whilst Alan would encourage the rest of the band to be involved and create alongside him artistically, he would be very staunch on what he would allow into these songs. And if he didn't like a certain lead lick, drum roll or bass line, he would say so, and it would be vetoed. It was now 2009, and broadcast on MTV was the live rendition of Hired Gun with Peter Doherty. This again brought Alan Wasp back into the mainstream alongside his best friend. Overall, the performance was received very well, but the obvious condition of both Alan and Peter was also very apparent.
To New Orleans, to the Badlands, way out west. I ride the nowhere beneath the sun. But there ain't no girl waiting for me, no one left up to adore me. That's the life of the hired gun.
Sheriff and his posse, they come riding after me. Spend my time living on the road. There's no girl waiting for me, waiting up my afterglory. That's the life of a hired gun. Sometimes I think I got to settle down just to change my ways. What's the use in dreaming? But I just drift around as I move from town to town. Well, I'll go where they require me, and I'll fight for those who harm me. I spend my time living like a lonely one, but there ain't no girl waiting for me, no one left up in my afterglory, and that's the life of a hired gun. Sometimes I think I'll get to settle down just to change my ways. What's the use in dreaming? But I just drift around as I go from town to town. Yes, I go from town to town.
What this performance did ensure musically was that Hired Gun was again thrust back into the spotlight. Hired Gun was written by Alan Wasp back in late 2003, early 2004, and this song, along with a jam excerpt of No Protection from Mick Jones' studio, was used in a 2005 documentary, Who the Fuck is Pete Doherty? These were supposedly used by Peter Doherty as a favour to Alan, designed to highlight Alan and his band at the time, Left Hand. But in reality, these were used as fillers, because at the time of filming there were possible legal issues as to what music of Peter's the producer could actually use that wasn't definitely tied in musically to the Libertines, who had just sacked Peter from his band. This was the first time Hired Gun had any mainstream coverage, and many thought it was a Pete Doherty composition, and for many years since that documentary it was sung as a duet where possible with Peter, which was many times due to the amount of gigs Alan supported Peter on throughout his lifetime. Over the years it became a permanent song on Alan's set list, either at his solo shows, with Left Hand, and later with the Lipstick Melodies. It wasn't until this televised version of Hired Gun broadcast by MTV that it became a real hit amongst Pete Doherty fans, and Alan Wass was once again back in the mainstream for his music rather than his lifestyle. This is where allegedly Alan made a deal with Peter that if he recorded the song with Alan and organised its release, then in exchange he would give Peter joint writing credits. It was agreed provisionally by Peter that it would be released commercially by Rough Trade, Peter's record label at the time, similar to what had been done with the single For Lovers, which was a song released by Pete Doherty but written many years before by Peter Wolf. And so began the battle from this day to get Hired Gun recorded by both Alan and Peter released.
1, 2, 3. Fought wars with a militant hand. His mom tried in vain never to understand. Blow on, well he drank and he smoked. Played cards with his life on the road where he drove, only to end up in a jailhouse he lost to his rider old Biggles, who claimed he double crossed. No silver, no gold, persuade Biggles' mind. So the judge did it for him, Billy Blow did sometime. But it wasn't too long before Billy broke free to the sound of life's freedom and sweet ragged company. Soon came the drums as they banged, we were off. We were rocking and rolling till the beat you can't stop. You don't always have to listen to what they might say, but I feel it blow and was by the name. Drink it, Billy Blow.
I think this is a good place to address Alan's friendship with Peter, as I found out very quickly whilst researching Alan was that there was a massive divide of Alan's fans that love Peter and those that are not so loving. Alan's friendship was very much a double-edged sword when it came to Peter. Their friendship and love for each other was very real, and that is true from a very early stage, well before either of them were famous. They both were very competent songwriters and poets, and both embraced a very bohemian way of life. Whilst Peter very early on lived a very much chosen hedonistic, shambolic and almost nihilistic approach to life, Alan was much more of a thoughtful, nurturing and caring person. His home from the get-go was very much an open house for his very close friends to spend time freely and often to rest and recuperate in private, away from prying eyes and the press. Now, I'm not saying that Alan was an angel and that he didn't have a choice in the matter. After all, every one of us are masters of our own destiny to a point, but Peter definitely played the fame game from the start and certainly courted the press with his lifestyle. Alan often got caught up in this, and sadly, whilst Peter had the backing and to a large degree the protection from a massive media management company as well as a multi-million-pound record label that had a vested interest in taking as much care of their artists as possible, they also had an even greater responsibility to recoup on their investment. For all the stories that made the headline regarding Peter's libertine lifestyle, many more were halted, gagged and prevented from being published. Alan sadly had none of this protection, and whilst he fearlessly and staunchly protected his best friend, often he would carry the can of the media's frustrations, and if a certain story couldn't be published, then they always had Peter's junkie mate to fall back on. This is also very prevalent when looking at Alan's and Peter's addictions. Both were by now full-blown alcoholics, and Peter for sure was also a heroin addict. Alan, of course, also courted heroin and other substances on occasion, but unlike Peter, he didn't inject, and all of Alan's problems stemmed predominantly from alcohol. Peter again often had the backing of the record company over the years to afford him the best treatment in the best clinics around the world, and often sent Peter away to confront his demons with the obvious goal of curing him. Alan again, on the other hand, had no such help, and was just left to deal with his ever-growing problem alone. Now, when I first started to put this story together, I wanted to concentrate on the musical side of Alan's life, and this is still my goal, but I soon found out that to not mention Alan's issues at all would not only be ignorant, but also quite impossible. I do, however, want to leave it there, as I really don't think that I'm qualified in any way to enter into any debate about Alan's demons. I also want to be quite clear that I'm not bashing Peter entirely, and it's important to point out that he did always ensure that Alan was welcome on as many tours and shows as possible, ensuring that he could earn enough to live life as a working musician, which was all Alan ever wanted to do. Peter's then manager and record company, however, was not so keen on the pair being together for obvious reasons, and this often left Alan out in the cold and on the thin end of the wedge. Alan and Peter's friendship worked in many ways, and both were trying to attain something from each other. For Alan, it could be said that this was his fast track to fame, and for Peter, this could be that Alan was something Peter could never be, and that was a bona fide working class poet and songwriter. Also around this time, Alan was again writing with Peter for his upcoming solo debut album, Grace Wasteland. He was no stranger to writing with Peter, and did so way back in 2004 when they both wrote What Katie Did Next for the then debut Baby Shambles album, Down in Albion.
Lesson I have learned: if you play with fire, you will get burned. Hey? Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. I'll tell you my story, make you wish you never, wish you never, never, wish you never been born. No, I may never learn, never know.
The track in question was Sweet By and By, and Alan does receive a writing credit on the sleeve notes of Grace Wastelands. Peter confusingly said in an interview way back in 2009 that the song was born from a line that Peter Wolf wrote, "Was it so long ago when we first hit the toad?" But even after this statement, Peter Wolf wasn't credited on the song at all. Even more confusing was that when Parlophone uploaded the song to YouTube, they omitted Alan's name from the credits altogether. Alan not only wrote the majority of this song, but also gave it his piano sound when the demo was submitted, and even though it was Stephen Large that actually played piano on the recording, it was Alan's original piano part that gave this song its ragtime piano sound in the first place.
Was it so long ago when we first hit the road? I remember those early short holes when we used to go ba ba da ba 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 da 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 da. Was it so long ago when you said you loved me so? with kisses untold, your love would unfold. Oh my, where did you go? Oh, I don't know. You didn't say goodbye. Where did you go? You lie here. Oh, you left me wondering if love's just a lie. Left me wondering if you found some other guy. Well, all I do is hang my head and cry. Sometimes I moan, sometimes I moan.
One of the very first recording sessions that were done by the Lipstick Melodies was with Mark Wallace. Mark Wallace is one of the most experienced and versatile producers and engineers around, having recorded with the likes of the Smiths, U2, Talking Heads, Travis and the Lars, to name just a few. There were 2 sessions done with Mark, one at his home studio where the initial plan was to record Hired Gun, and Peter Doherty was at this first session, but the desk broke and sadly nothing could be recorded. Later, the Lipstick Melodies, sadly lacking Pete Doherty, attended a second session at Mark's Willesden studio, where amongst other songs, Dress Up was recorded.
Well, there was a time, yeah, when you would smile at me. Well, you looked awful happy and sad, but then you were very pretty. Yeah, remember when you promised me you'd be my pearly queen. But if you get all dressed up for my darling, I might just get down on my knees. Now we look so hot, we look so weary, desperately vain on my way. Please bring me some assistance, put this fire out of my brain. I'm all washed up, can't seem to see my way through the haze. Yeah. But if you get all dressed up for me, baby, I might just get down on my bended knees. Between a hard place, throw a rock against your deep nasty tomb. You know your liberty, your freedom, you better put them to good use. Oh, shine a light, then shine it all over your nasty blues. And if you get all dressed up for me, darling, I might just get down deep for you.
It's now 2011 and the gigs are plentiful, and so are the songs, as Alan is definitely keeping his fans happy around this time, and generally if you saw Alan perform either solo or with the Lipstick Melodies, there would be a new song revealed at that gig. Alan would also upload acoustic demos and short videos from various performances, and these would be shared freely on the internet. The Lipstick Melodies, as well as dominating the live circuit, also appeared on a charity album called Raise the Bar, with what's thought to be their rendition of a fantastic left-hand song, Hard Times No Sunshine. But this is somewhat cheeky, as it's not the Lipstick Melodies but the recording Robbie Moore did some years previously with Left Hand. This was a compilation album released to save the well-known pub in Kentish Town called the Toriano. This was no ordinary pub. It had a live lounge that often showcased new and unsigned acts and was frequented by songwriters, poets and comedians, and had been doing so since the 1800s. It included songs by a multitude of artists of the time, including Peter Doherty, Peter Wolf and Jerome Alexander. It was released on May 2011 by Raise the Bar Records and later in 2020 uploaded to YouTube by Kudos Records. A launch party was also held at the Toriano where some of these acts performed, and Alan was included on the bill performing a solo acoustic set then later that evening with the Lipstick Melodies.
Well, she leads an easy old life. She holds you by daylight and dance by the night. The guys with the money and the girls with white eyes. There's some things that money can't buy. Yeah, like laughing and joking and loving and smoking. There's no point in keeping back the cards you've been rolling. So if you ever think twice about your two-time wife, well, don't ever think twice when she's gone. Yeah, gone, baby.
The shows continued and the Lipstick Melodies played some big gigs around this time, and one such gig was the Bristol O2, where again the crowd were calling for Hired Gun to be played, adding more pressure for Alan and Peter to get this song recorded and released.
Play a little slow one for you, that's alright. Yeah, we'll do this little slow one and then we'll do that, yeah? We'll deal. We'll have ourselves a deal. Living in sin. We all know about that, don't we? Eh?
Saying
tired of living in sin, and 2012 is the year he ties the knot with his longtime sweetheart Eliza, and on the 7th of April they are married at Marylebone Registry Office, London.
I bet that she's can as I feel the fan of your cool breeze. Yeah, when I'm at ease with you, babe. So just let me be, and don't look so scared that I'm back here, so unprepared in black and blue and scarlet red, night magic starlights, the road read red as I heard what you said. Now with your cool breeze, yeah, well I'll be at ease with you, babe. Yes, I'll be at ease with you, babe. Sometimes I say to myself, should I stick around or should I jump ship? I feel like I'm walking the plank with you, darling, and you know that I can't do this. And I heard someone say this in a song before, but I feel for him just as any man surely would. Oh Lord, don't let my love slip away. I don't want to be misunderstood. So I talk about our times gone by, just concentrate on our advantages. The knife was sharp, but now that it's blunt, resist temptation, name our destination. We'll travel the nation with your cool breeze. Yeah, when I'll be at ease with you, babe.
Things are going really well all round, and Alan has built up quite an extensive collection of songs, and after a very long hiatus he is ready to start thinking about getting signed and getting his songs published. He has had offers, but was determined to be respected as an artist in his own right, and wanted to be free to write and release his songs without interference from record executives and managers. Alan is now determined to pin Peter down to recording Hired Gun with him, and as agreed years before, finally getting this released commercially. Alan, along with the Lipstick Melodies, effortlessly get this backing track done for Peter to come and lay down his vocals, but the first time this is done, the vocals for a few reasons were unusable, and it's remembered that Peter was very displeased with having to record them again at a later date. Nevertheless, the single was finally recorded at Great Eastern Studios and produced by both Alan and Kenny Patterson, and it was later mixed by Charlie Nash at Urban Chain Studios. This single is pressed to vinyl along with Golden Heartache as its B-side, also recorded and mixed at Urban Chain Studios, and the launch party for the single is arranged in Camden Town.
Well, from Houston to New Orleans to the Badlands way out west, a hard in there where beneath the sun. There ain't no old girl waiting for me, no one left up to call me. That's the life of a hired gun. Well, the sheriff and
Sadly, from the offset, this single release was constantly blocked by Peter's record label Rough Trade, and after roughly a year of false promises and battling with the record label, the Lipstick Melodies organised it to be released as a free giveaway by Joyride Records. This was quite a blow for Alan, as this was not what was originally agreed, though as a paltry token gesture, Rough Trade agreed to sell it in their record store. Because of this, the record obviously didn't have the impact that was intended, as this would have given Alan and the Lipstick Melodies some much needed coverage, as it had done back in 2004 for Peter Wolf, and as a result Alan felt somewhat understandably shortchanged, but would never publicly admit this, staying as ever loyal to his best friend Peter Doherty. After speaking with Charlie Nash about his mixing of Hired Gun, it turns out that between the years of 2010 and 2012, the Lipstick Melodies were actually working with him on and off at Urban Change Studios on an album provisionally titled Misbehaving. This turns out to be where all the songs on this digital album that Eliza uploaded to the internet are actually from, though they are all rough cuts and basic monitor mixes. Charlie amazingly still has all the original stems to these tracks, including a rough demo recorded as a song called Wounded. And I'm really happy to say that after speaking with both Charlie and members of the Lipstick Melodies, they have agreed after all these years to mix, master and finish this album and finally make it available, as it was always intended to be. No other music was officially released during the Lipstick Melodies' career, but in and around this time I sensed the band were concentrating more on other projects. Alan also seemed to be doing more acoustic solo shows and gigs with Peter Doherty. He tours with Peter in Paris and Tel Aviv, as well as a solo tour in Italy. He plays many shows with the Rotten Hill Gang, and his new solo manager, Tony Rowe, secures and organises a small tour in Holland with Paddy Stratton. Murphy had temporarily left the band by this stage to concentrate on his solo album with The General that his record label was by now demanding. Richie too was often absent from the live gigs, and Alan had advertised for a Jerry Lee Lewis style pianist. Also around this time, Alan advertises for a female vocalist on social media. This led me to believe that the Lipstick Melodies were starting to disband, or at the very least evolve, as a female vocalist called Dee Harlow played Hyde Park in a few gigs for the Lipstick Melodies and was described as a superb rock vocalist. The Hyde Park gig was also attended by Christian Marr, Alexi Christo, and also welcomed back for this gig and some smaller London shows, Ben Jackson on the drums.
Something to me. Say it quick, won't you make it snappy? You're taking my money and all of my time. All you seem to do is drink my whiskey and wine. Yeah, but I don't mind. I've got to have myself a good time.
to add more confusion, around this time a photo shoot with Ian McKell that includes Alan Ross, Sky Murphy and Phil Clark with David Sanger of the Sanger Stage Show and his show wagon appear on Alan's social media. Noticeable absences are that of both Richie Stevens and Alexi Christo, though I have been informed that Alexi was actually working on a video shoot elsewhere at this time.
Tumbling kill, but I find myself rolling down. So don't break my heart, 'cause it's far too dark. Yeah, and if we drift apart, there'll be no time for a new start to bring you back again. Yeah, no words have been said that can raise the weekend we just had ourselves. And the sun is wet to the slide of your back. Yeah, last night as we were laying down.
This created a rumour, further fuelled a few years later by Pete Doherty's interview where he stated that Alan was starting a new band called the Travelling Tinkers. Now, Alan often had ideas for bands and band names. In fact, more than one person has told me that if Alan played a good show or a set with you and he liked it, he would immediately start thinking up plans to include you in a project, often naming that project on the spot. But in reality, very few of these ever materialised past the planning discussion stages. David Sanger himself remembers the photo shoot very fondly. But although he vaguely remembers the Travelling Tinkers mentioned as a project, and quite obviously being the inspiration behind it, he has no recollection of any official offer for him to join the band, though he often played with Alan Ross, and was together with both Alan and Eliza on what would be Alan's last Christmas.
I go to the Clyde, I go to the West Country, I'm on leave, I can't choose between. Maybe I wrote you a letter, yeah, I said just a few short old lines.
I know personally that Alan liked the idea of a travelling lifestyle, as he mentioned this to me himself, though he was speaking at the time in a mock Southern American accent, as he did every so often. So this could have been said with tongue firmly in cheek. The solo shows continue, as well as gigs with the Lipstick Melodies, which now include Christian Meyer on guitar, and often Dee Harlow joins them. This time and into 2015, life is looking good for both Alan and his wife, as Eliza has just signed a book deal and so sets to work on completing her first novel that is to be published very soon. Alan also signs a record deal with Sensible Music and is busy working on a new album provisionally titled Bound to Blue. These sessions predominantly take place in a manor house that Phil Clark is squatting way out of London in Hertfordshire, with both Phil engineering and mixing the album. Alan is also showcasing some of his new songs at solo shows and is filmed singing one for the Sofa Session series, and this was posted to YouTube.
Somebody told me love don't last. I've already raised my mast. Maybe I think it's time my love set sail, and if we sail long and hard enough, we might just see a blue whale. I know she knows that you know what's going on. I know she knows, then you must have known all along. Only girl
about the love is the only girl that I couldn't trust, yeah. She let me down just like all the rest. I was left wondering to myself, was I only ever her guest, yeah. But if I know, she knows, you know what's going on. I know that she knows, then you must have known all along.
It's also a little known fact that at this time Alan had enrolled himself into the Tech Music School at the University of West London and was studying for a degree in songwriting. Sadly, this peak of happiness is to be short-lived, as in February Alan fell victim to a freak accident at his home in Ladbroke Grove. Lots of accounts have been given as to exactly what happened on this night, but very few of them are correct. It was reported and even thought by myself that Alan had been drinking heavily, but this really wasn't the case. Alan was actually cooking steaks for himself and his manager Tony Rowe. He finished the steaks off perfectly, as only Alan could do, and sat down to eat them when he realised he'd forgotten his fork, so he put his plate down and rushed back into the kitchen. The tiled floor in the kitchen was wet, and Alan slipped across the floor and smashed straight through the coloured plate glass partition and nigh on severed his right arm. Alan actually dies at the scene, as he has cut through a main artery and 2 nerves in his arm, and panic ensues. Alan is bleeding profusely, and his quick-thinking manager quickly grabbed Alan's belt and tightened it on his arm in a makeshift tourniquet. This, along with a blood transfusion in the street, a helicopter ride to St Mary's Hospital, and an emergency operation, saves Alan's life. Alan himself posts a message to his social media thanking his manager, the air ambulance and the hospital staff, as well as all the messages he has received from fans, and vows to carry on with a new lease of life and an extremely positive attitude to what can only be described as devastating injuries that has now left his right hand almost numb and with very little dexterity in any of his fingers. This is typical of how brave and positive Alan is as an individual, and he busily gets to work on a new incarnation of the Lipstick Melodies band and now renames them the Tourniquet. It's been reported as he disbanded the Lipstick Melodies and he quit the Lipstick Melodies, but really it just brought back the original members, Alan, with Alexi Christo, Phil Clark and Richie Stevens, and seeing the Sky was absent at the time, Christian Marr also came back into the fold, though Christian was playing some shows with the Lipstick Melodies before Alan's accident. Also, Sky Murphy played on and off around this time, and Sky was due to return full-time with the band, but at this time he had some personal issues to take care of. Initially, Alan is very upbeat about his accident and pretty much continues on as normal, and even quips about being the first one-armed guitarist. He continues to record vocals for his new album, and even performs vocally at some shows. He is amazingly shown playing guitar at his home literally days after being released from hospital, which is seen as a very positive step.
What's that rattling?
The dark end of the street, that's where we'll meet, chasing shadows, yeah, places without living on time, yeah, online, at the dark end of the street. Yeah, that's where we come to meet. Yeah.
Initially, Alan cleans up and stays positive. Alan himself puts this message up on his website. This is to be so sadly short-lived, and Alan's mental well-being is quite understandably extremely erratic, with bouts of what have been described to me as very dark days. Alan is on strong painkillers at the time for his injury, and is advised to steer clear of alcohol, but Alan ignores this advice, and this adds to Alan's already erratic behaviour and causes his depression to deepen. And roughly a month after this awful accident, Alan again embarks on a very heavy drinking session and ends up back at his flat. There are so many conflicting stories that I have been told about Alan's last day and evening, and a full inquest is out there in the public domain, but in the interests of completion, Alan is injected with heroin and falls into a coma. He is taken to hospital, and 11 days later, on the 26th of April 2015, he sadly passes away after a heart attack. He is aged just 34, and not 33 as reported in the press. This shows just how slapdash and wrong the mainstream media is when it comes to Alan's life and sad death. After an extremely upsetting and lengthy inquest, the verdict is given as an unlawful killing. This was such a cruel end for Alan, as first his music was taken and then his life, and the press at the time was so unkind with its reports, which were just plain hurtful and incorrect.
Song, yeah, sing it so sweet, sweeter than Tupelo honey. You make a blind man see, make a man out of me. For all the love you gave me, you're the queen, your eyes blinded by the country's youth and a timeless surprise. Why don't you think about it? Maybe something that you've never, ever, ever before. And if you go away on your own, please don't be too long. I will be waiting here patiently from the moment that you are gone, from the moment you're gone. Loving you madly, loving you sadly, watching you in your new company. All the happiness I hold so dearly is moving on, girl. Can't you see that if you go away on your own, please don't be too long. I will be waiting here patiently from the moment that you're gone, from the moment you're gone.
There is a website for the tourniquet published by Eliza, which as far as I can tell was put up after Alan's death, and therefore isn't strictly correct as to who the members were. Eliza had by this time gained control of Alan's music from Sensible Records, and she uploads 4 digital albums to the site and to various other music sites. They are titled as the Lipstick Melodies, Left Hand, Hired Gun EP and Love Songs. Some songs are incorrectly attributed to the Lipstick Melodies, when in fact they are Left Hand recordings, and vice versa. Also, all songs are titled The Lipstick Melodies Tourniquet, which just makes them all the more confusing.
Sweet, sweet, sweet,
is footage of the Lipstick Melodies rehearsing after Alan's death for a tribute show in West London, an all-day festival held in a couple of venues. They had an Alan Moss stage that they basically played Alan's songs on to finish the night, each taking turns to sing different songs. This included Sky Murphy, Alexi Christo, Jackson Scott, Richie Stephens and Phil Clark. Both Alexi Christo and Christian Marr also did a small tour of Italy later in 2016 as a tribute to Alan playing some cities that he went to, as Alan had quite a big following there. Riccardo Nicolello, who was Alan's tour manager in Italy and a very close friend, read a few words before each gig, a poem he wrote about Alan. The band also confirmed that Phil was busy mixing an album, but it understandably proved far too raw for the band members to revisit the music so soon after Alan's death, and so sadly, it was abandoned.
Well, I go where they go, I'll be now about those who want me. Spend my time living like a lonely one. Yeah, but when my work is through, there ain't no just can't seem to shake you, shake you, shake you off my mind. No matter how hard, no matter how hard I try. And everywhere I go, you're there. And everywhere you go, I die, die, die. For every love that's lost in lies can be found in true eyes. So why did you leave me empty? Why did you leave me empty? When you knew, when you knew, when you knew, when you knew that I still have plenty. Yeah, plenty to give. Nothing to lose, nothing to lose, baby. And all the nights that passed, I passed over to my demon. One day, when you're older, I hope that you haven't got any colder eyes. I'm all dressed up in your layers now, you know I couldn't wear any more. Don't be so surprised. But he hopes she knows I couldn't enough rope. Teardrops fall down from the canvas. I see the colors slowly fade away. So please stop jacking me every which way but loose. I ain't that hangman standing over your head trying to tighten up the nose. Come on, sister, won't you show me your face once in a little while? I wouldn't even recognize you, girl, let alone the way we smile. But I can make your heart sing, and you play my heart sing so, so. Here I go. Of the two
One is black and one is blue. Don't need all the colors of the rainbow, yeah, to know just what I mean. Ain't exactly no all painted. Can't you see, little girl?